Oh.
And we're live, Elise.
Hello.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. How are you, Ursula?
Excellent. I am the same. Thank you.
Fantastic. How is your Mercury retrograde going?
Personally, pretty smooth so far, but I always sort of, treat it like a magical time. So I'm just kind of taking the nudge to slow down, which is nice.
I
So
love
it's been,
that.
pretty good so far. Thanks. How about you?
So far, so good. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And a little bit of a segue into our topic of today, which is that we heart Pluto. I've been getting some interesting feedback from both clients and friends, family members about part of their Mercury retrograde really feels like having like reliving old storylines. And
Oh.
so I think that's so fascinating because we have this connection between, the we believe, philosophical and like self philosophy of Sagittarius into what it's anchored in, what aspects of the subconscious of the underworld of Scorpio are these things actually tied to, or maybe even originated from. And so I think it's interesting that while we're navigating that bridge with the Mercury retrograde going back over that people are even doing like they're really actually experiencing old timelines, flashbacks of old versions of self, some people even past
Mm.
lifetimes. So I think that's so fascinating. Almost this like these karmic contracts that may be part of, their either spiritual or soul lineage, maybe even blood, family lineage, and these like karmic debts and how they've produced kind of different timelines, storylines, scenarios, relationships, shared resource scenarios and stuff like that of now. So I just think that's so fascinating. And I look forward to digging deeper into the meaning, the very rich and deep meaning of Pluto, of the eighth house, and even of the Scorpio archetype, so that we can unpack its significance. I feel like people who are without any native eighth house placements are it's really too intense, and it's shrouded in mystery, and it's something that people don't like to touch. Whereas I have an eighth house stellium, so I'm just like, oh my God, let's go. So
Yep.
let's start
And
with our little bell real quick.
perfect. Thank you.
Yay. Thank
The
you.
space
And
is
welcome to the
open.
space. The space is open. What were you saying?
I was just going to say my Neptune's in the eighth. So,
Ooh, wow. That
yeah.
is really wavy gravy. I can't even
Hmm.
imagine. I really can't. I mean, and that's coming from someone who natally has their Neptune in the first house. Wow, I can't even imagine what it's like to have Neptune in the eighth house. That seems like really intense. Really
Yeah,
intense.
it has been. It's been really, I mean, once I started diving more deeply into it, it's sort of been this whole journey of letting Neptune out of the closet.
I love that. Letting
Yeah.
Neptune out of the closet. We might
And
you might need to do your own podcast episode on that.
I do, I have one.
Oh, good. Okay, letting
Yeah,
Neptune out of
yeah.
the closet. I love that. I hope
Yeah.
we can link that in the comments or something like that, because I think that would be really enriching, especially for people who are interested in knowing more about the eighth house. And yeah, just all of its interesting permutations, whether you have nothing in there or something as mysterious and inspiring, but also possibly misleading
Confused.
as Neptune in the eighth house.
Yeah.
So what should we start with? Oh, it's so weird. I just opened my astrology book to this whole thing on Neptune, which is not what we're technically
Oh,
covering today, but I like how Neptune is here with us. Neptune is here
yes.
blessing this particular podcast episode. probably because you just being here and sharing your wisdom is part of letting Neptune out of the closet, which I'm sure Neptune appreciates tremendously.
Yeah. And being able to talk about it and convey the information verbally is, part of your repertoire here too, having Mercury there. So,
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes,
yeah.
I have Sun, Moon, and Mercury in the eighth
Yeah.
house. And it is a lot. It is a lot. One of the major things that it really does not allow me to do very well is make small talk. If I'm making small talk, it's because I'm functioning out of like a different aspect of my being. I'm slash masking slash dissociating.
Yeah.
If I'm talking about the deep dark of things, I'm talking I also, do comedy sometimes, but I just remember one of the times that I just felt so seen is when a comedian named Tyler Richardson, who's a good friend of mine, was like, "Oh, you have no chill." He was like, "You know how to chill, but you actually have no chill. Like you're
Mm,
intense, your intensity is actually the standard mode of operation."
yes.
And then, but you're fun as hell and you're funny and stuff like that. And I was like, you just completely got my eighth house stellium, but with a Sagittarius ascendant. Like, oh my God, I feel so seen. I've literally never felt so seen in my life. So,
Mm, that's a great
um,
description.
thank you. So,
Yeah.
what should we start with the planet first, the
Yeah, that's what I
archetype
was
first?
thinking.
Okay, because we do love
Since it
Pluto.
is our guest of honor this week and next week.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah. So Elise and I put together some visuals for everybody because there are so many decks, tarot, oracle, that have this awesome artwork. And you'll see actually as we start putting these up on the screen that they share a lot of similar images. And
Hmm.
we'll kind of, discuss that throughout. But so I pulled the Pluto card out of my Star Codes Astro Oracle deck. So we can
Okay.
kind of maybe start with that and
Okay.
then just sort of dissect the imagery here.
Ooh, I love that. I'm
Yeah,
loving
well,
that.
so the message on the card is rebirth.
Yes, and which is what Pluto, well, I also think of it as, the death card in tarot. It's certainly what Scorpio,
Yes.
which is ruled by Pluto, represents. And also, everyone, welcome to Wax Hermetic. Thank you for spending your Wednesday with us. Maybe like a little backstory on why we decided on we heart Pluto is because one of the things that we really need to get down to brass tacks about when we're talking about bringing intuitive knowledge, intuitive arts, hermetic knowledge and practices to the forefront of our mind instead of allowing society, the modern day, the science cult, whatever you want to call it, all of those things together, from denying the existence of spirit, of your soul, of the energetics of things being primary, and even taking a linear mindset and actually getting hip to the circular nature of existence, of consciousness, and where the death of one thing is actually the birth of another. And that is really what what Scorpio, Pluto, eighth house, and this amazing rebirth card all is. So part of resurrecting the temple is addressing rebirth, death, surrender, death, rebirth, transition, transformation as an essential part of consciousness, and how many times your consciousness, your persona, your preconceived notions of things, whatever, actually die and transform into something else, the birth of something else, and the rebirth of the person that is experiencing it. So,
Yes.
wow, this card is amazing.
Isn't this cool? So yeah, let's like kind of pick apart the representations here just from, I mean, we could even just start with the symbol if you wanted to, because all the planetary glyphs have meaning in and of themselves and how the order of how the parts of it are placed. So, I mean, we could even just start there and then just go down and then start
Yeah,
bringing
I'm
in the other images. Yeah.
right. Well, I mean, yeah, so like the Pluto glyph on top, why don't you tell us a little about that?
Yeah. So we have the circle of consciousness. So the fact that it's at the top of the glyph means something
Hmm.
because as you were just saying, like consciousness, all of this is there's cycles. It's a, it's not, it's a spiral. It's not a fine straight line. So we have to go through these cycles of life and these cycles of, death and rebirth and everything in between. It's part of life. It's part of, it's the second part is the crescent of spirit. So pulling that down into our consciousness is really important. And that's part of what this glyph conveys as well. And just like you were saying, how Pluto represents the spirit, Pluto represents what the spirit wants. So we have to have that part, we have to bring that up into our awareness, which isn't always the easy part, which is why this topic, death and all that, just can be so mysterious. And then we ground it in with the cross of matter. So
Right.
it starts, from above and then comes down through. I mean, that's sort of how we become people too. I mean, we have to have our soul and inhabit our body. So Pluto kind of touches on all these different things. And essentially, it's just I always quote my astrology teacher on this because he was so brilliant in describing Pluto as a Buddha incognito.
Ooh, I love that.
So yeah, and it's just like you have to go through the underworld journey. I mean, you can choose not to, obviously, but there's always a choice. But just being willing to go down into the depth of your consciousness or whatever you're going through in your life and experience, into your own soul, and then just bringing that back up into your awareness. And it's just always a constant. There's always somewhere deeper to go.
Right.
So
And
it's like, that's what I consider the Plutonic process.
I love that. I also love how the spirit is holding consciousness, but then grounds it into matter. And you can see the anchor below the crossing point of like the material world. So again,
Exactly.
we're working with polarities. We're working with the fact that whatever you're focused on actually has an anchor point that is its opposite point that is there to anchor it. And so that you can maximize really in that direction and feel it fully without flying off your axis. And that is just
Exactly.
it's so amazing. And how like consciousness is birthing all of these things, but in some way it also looks like spirit growing out of the ground and reaching consciousness. It gives a real like dual directional kind of vibe as to, and that's what the birth and rebirth, or the death and rebirth process is really, what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing, like,
Yeah.
so I love that. And then let's move on. I love this multi-dimensional grid behind it, the 3D grid behind it.
Yes.
That is so tremendous. I mean, I don't even know where to start. This is my first time seeing this one, everyone. So, wow.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is just like a snapshot too. Like everything that's surrounding Pluto in this image on the card is constantly in motion. They think about an atom or electrons or whatever. Like if you're seeing a rendition of it or some kind of artistic rendering, you're just getting that moment where it actually like captures it, in static, but it's never static.
right,
So I feel like it kind of brings in the infinity part of the process too, because there's always some kind of life, death, rebirth cycle going on at all times in this physical realm.
completely. Wow.
And then Pluto actually has a little heart on it. I mean, if the images are real, I mean, we could always dive more deeply into that too. But Pluto just, it's tiny, it's icy, it's way far out, but it's
Yeah.
got a little heart on it. So I mean, it is like we were not being facetious when we had the whole like the heart symbol in the name of the episode today, because Pluto does have a heart of ice. But I mean, there's reason behind it.
Right.
You have to be willing to melt it to get into it.
Right. And then also the presence of water is like what we have, gives life, like water being like this element of life, as well as
Yeah.
spiritual continuum. And it being frozen is like the wisdom of spiritual continuum that has existed from the origin, because I always say that I'm obsessed with origins because of,
Mhm.
and spiritual origins, taking it all the way back to the crust is my very eighth house Mercury kind of standard mode of operation, is that spiritual origins of consciousness, or the consciousness origins of the material world, and how they're all connected with each other, are actually frozen in this crystalline water, which carries the information. It carries all of the, wisdom of spirit there, as well as the will. I also love how there's something so, it's like under, also like an iceberg almost, it's like you only see
Yes.
the top of it, but there's all this stuff underneath. When the saying that you're only like seeing or scratching the tip of the iceberg, means that there's so much that is hidden under the surface, which is exactly what Pluto and everything that it represents, including the surrender to death, and the what waits on the other side, the rebirth that waits on the other side has. And we're so removed from that. We are literally, our culture, Western, modern American culture, just Western culture in general, is so anti-death. When, just around the time that Pluto was discovered in the 1930s, right? We were still having, here in New York, we barely had any, I don't think Central Park was even built, or if it was like just being finished. And otherwise, our major park places, or places that you would picnic and promenade, were Greenwood Cemetery. And, we have cemeteries that have promenades. We would eat with our dead all the time. That was like where that was our green space, especially if you moved into an urban area. It's the only green space that they preserved, actually. So they did city planning, and we weren't allergic to it. We weren't thinking that we were cursing ourselves. This was so common.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
we could not fathom it. We're like, ew, no. I like cemeteries. I'm a weirdo
Me
like that.
too. You're not.
Yeah.
I share
I'm
that.
just
There's something, it's not scary, it's just there's
mhm.
something so peaceful about it. And
So peaceful.
I just love walking around, especially old ones, to see just like, just the history that's there. Like and some of the ones that even around here, the statues, I guess you could say, or like
Oh yeah.
the monuments, the mausoleums, like they're just gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
The
Gorgeous.
architecture of them, the design of them is just, it blows me away.
Right. And before we were building huge skyscrapers and stuff like that, people were maxing out their engineering skills and their even alchemical engineering skills to perfect a final resting place, and the monument that was left to memorialize that person, that soul's physical existence in that body. And we were still like living in, clay huts,
Yeah.
but we'd have like an ornate, structure to house our dead and to memorialize our dead. It almost gives you the idea that so much of us, or so much of our previous consciousness that we have so much lost, or at least lost touch with today, knew that from death is born life. And
Exactly.
that's even what the Scorpio Taurus axis is really representing. And we touched on that when we did the full moon in Taurus.
Yeah, last week's episode.
Right.
Yeah.
I like these gears of the universe, and like of
Yeah.
consciousness, like all
Isn't that
going
cool?
to, and then it has this axis that goes through it. And what is this? What is that the Earth? What is this thing that's on the axis line?
It's it's Pluto in the middle.
No, the thing above it on the
Oh,
right.
oh. I think that's one of its moons.
Okay.
It's mentioned in the description in the card, just like in the guidebook.
Mm-hmm.
It's Sharon or Charon. I'm not sure how to
Mm-hmm.
pronounce it. Charon.
Right.
So I think that is depicted in this image also, because Pluto's got moons too. I mean, it's like I said, far out there, but it still exists just like any other planet that we have in our solar system.
Right. And it's so yeah, Pluto, isn't it fascinating to think that Pluto is so small, but it also has its own moon.
Yeah,
Wild.
exactly. Yeah, so I think that's important to pull in too, because we're just, trying to just give it the honor that it deserves in
Right.
this two-part series.
I'm also loving what is this triangular thing on the bottom corner, and there's one that's on the top corner too, because it's looking very vortexy and it's looking very vaginal to me. It's giving me
Mm,
for like womb, like portal into the material world. Like this is the portal space.
I think
Um,
that's a good interpretation.
I That's what it's giving me, and I think that's also really interesting because we also, Pluto was original. I'm sorry, Scorpio was originally ruled by Mars before the discovery of Pluto, and now we assign Pluto to Scorpio, which is a feminine sign, and but it's still there's still so much connection to Mars, its original, its ancient
Oh yeah.
ruler. And so I think this understanding and the unfolding of consciousness bringing to our awareness and our visibility, of Pluto and our solar system, and that it's basically like the feminine Mars sign, it's like
Yes.
it's the feminine Mars sign as opposed to, Aries, which is like the ultimate masculine Mars sign. It's literally the sign of masculinity.
Yeah.
Um, so I like this that it's representing both the energetic and the physical portal as as the ruler, like the I don't know. It's the receiving like aspect of Pluto slash Mars energy.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think too, it's important because Pluto is like if when you're having a Pluto transit in particular, it is
Mhm.
like you're in a vortex.
Mhm.
You are going through some kind of death process in some way, shape, form, or another. Like there's no way that that's not happening at some point of the, because Pluto transits last for years
Mhm.
because Pluto takes 248 years to go all the way around. So, I
Right.
mean, we're all born with Pluto somewhere. We will only experience Pluto going over a part of our charts our entire lives.
Mhm.
So that's important to note too, because it's so slow. I mean, if you're thinking about things like, the birth process and the incubation period and it being like a vortex and kind of being like in a chrysalis to an extent, because while you're in that goo, something else is being created.
That's right. And
Yeah.
it's really fascinating to think that there's huge swaths of our population that will never experience Pluto going over, say, its AC, its ascendant, the its x-axis. And I really think there is such a difference in experience and awareness. I also, coming from a karmic astrology background, really think that it is a very karmic thing to be someone who does experience the Pluto transit going over one's first house versus someone who will never experience that. Obviously, Pluto going over, your IC, Pluto going over your descendant, Pluto going over your medium coli, all
Yeah.
bring their own level of tectonic shift, their own
Yes.
level of destruction and, cataclysm and rebirth that Pluto transits, signify. But I myself, having being a Sagittarius ascendant, have experienced, and being a native Pluto in Scorpio person is so it's major. There's no going back. There's no what Pluto teaches you. There's no going back. The whole thing is you're changed completely. You know,
Yes.
I even think of like there's something about Pluto. It changes it so in total that it's even different from Uranus, which we think of as just Uranus blows frenetic energy at something so that I always think of Uranus just taking this frenetic energy and it just battering Saturn's structures, because it
Yes.
leads to waste anything that can't be brought forth through like into the future with it. Anything after the smoke clears, after having Uranus make contact with it, if it's still intact, it's still useful, it's still buildable, it has kind of like its own place, at least for the present, and bridging forward into the future. But Pluto, like I said, there's no when the tectonic shifts of the soul, of this like of the plates of the soul move around and the earth opens up and whole things are swallowed into it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even
Yeah.
first off, you're not even building on the same ground. You don't even
If
have
you're
any
even still
remnants.
alive.
You don't even have like crumbs left of whatever it was
No.
that was just swallowed into the earth. So that's what we're talking about with the intensity and the totality with which Pluto changes us, and our contact with Pluto changes us completely. And also, it gives me very much how Pluto is um, Pluto/Scorpio, that in like death is the great leveler of all things,
Yes.
and that it's the thing that we know is definitely waiting for all of us. So that correlation with Pluto and Scorpio, eighth house, fears, phobias, things that are you like brood over, things that have power over you, control over you because they are, but from afar. It's not it's not a woolly mammoth or, someone waiting with a gun or something like that. It is something that is from afar, that is controlling your being from a deep knowingness of
Mm-hmm.
inevitability, and that, that there is something waiting for you on the other side of this, and it kind of just permeating into all aspects of life, whether you're willing to acknowledge it or not.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
also,
So that was,
sorry, I just also, I hate the saying that like, the only thing you have to do is pay taxes and die, and that they're both ruled by the eighth house Scorpio like, kind of situation. So,
mm-hmm.
okay, eighth house. Let's look at this. Eighth
So this is from
house.
the same deck. That was a good
Okay.
segue because we were going to touch on the eighth house as well. And then I think maybe just kind of looking at the other cards that we have prepared for today could be really fun. Because like I said, you'll see this a lot of the same imagery threaded throughout, regardless of what deck it's coming from.
I love this. I love how we
Is
can
it?
even see what looks like that Charon moon in the background too. It looks like around the Pluto. That also kind of looks like an eye with like a mandala or something on it. We
Yeah,
have the
there's lots of
skull.
sacred geometry. Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is incredible. And what kind of flower is that? It's giving me almost like a dahlia or like a
Let me see if it describes it. But yeah, I think you're right. Like one of the or datura, like one of the poisonous,
mm-hmm.
nightshades
Yeah,
that are so beautiful but so dangerous. Kind of
right.
like Pluto.
Yeah, Pluto is so beautiful and so dangerous. And yeah, just the fact that we have this. So so the eighth house, for those of you who are new to astrology or just, astrology curious, is where we go from the union of two, I like to call them I ams. I personally think
Mm-hmm.
that the seventh house and Libra, which is represented by the scales, and the seventh house rules marriage, rules any long term committed partnership of allies, business partners. It also rules open enemies. So I always say, yes, Romeo and Juliet are a seventh house union, but so are the Capulets and the Montagues, who are
Mm,
committed to a long-term public feud of of being enemies, and it is like it's on record, it's of public knowledge, and they are committed to it. They're constantly balancing out between each other in this feud state. So it's not always only just like whatever, and it's not just all the marriage and like the happy unions. It's also the people that come together to lock horns for a long period of time. They're committed to that antagonistic, adversarial relationship. And
mhm.
so the eighth house is where what happens after the marriage is formed. You consummate the marriage in the eighth house.
Yes.
um, you consummate the marriage in the eighth house in Scorpio, and you experience the death of the two individual entities that came together to form the union in the seventh house. And you enter into this underworld of where we unite in a way that can't be undone. We are uniting the souls and becoming one. And that
Yeah.
means that you also are mixing not only the physical matter, but the spiritual, the soul matter, and experience an alchemical transformation, which to me,
Yeah.
Pluto is all about the alchemical transformation of the soul,
Yes.
of
Where
soul
you're
making.
intertwined with someone else.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
that means that you also are now a recipient or a beneficiary of all of the things that they came with that you may have not been privy to when we were just keeping everything neat and tidy and fair, for the
And
marriage
seen.
negotiations. Yeah, now you're getting all the unseen things. You're getting
Mhm.
the karmic debts, as well as maybe even the monetary debts, the
Yes.
secrets, the
The
fears
secrets.
that are there actually exist. Even they exist in the mitochondria. They exist in a cellular level, and which is connected to the spiritual level, energetic level, and now they are commingled, and we have entered a place that we're forged in hell now. The marriage may
Mhm.
have been made up above on the earth's plane, but the actual uniting of the souls happens in a much deeper place, in this eighth
Yeah.
house of sex, secrets, lies, debts, and hidden enemies, right? Because the seventh house rules the known ones, the public ones. But now you may have inherited through this union, through this commingling of souls in the eighth house, enemies that you did not realize existed as part of the contract.
I think in the eighth, it's more like where you're your own worst enemy.
Oh, you think so? I always think of that
Yeah.
as being, I think of the 12th house as that. So
Mm.
I know that
That too. Yes.
12th house is the planet or the house of self undoing,
Yes.
Um, and I guess, yeah, eighth house
I
it
mean, like
can be.
your own shadow.
Yes, it is your shadow for sure,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
it's the shadow side of life, right? If the second house across from the eighth house represents the physical body, the physical experience, the inherent value of it, and what your inherent, um, tangible value is. The eighth house is your inherent, or your inherent or your inherited, um, antimatter,
Yes.
the shadow value, or yeah, just like, I don't know,
Mhm.
antimatter is like the only thing I could think of right now. But
Yeah.
this skeleton, it's really getting to me. So skeletons freak me out. I mean,
Oh,
I love them, but skeletons have always been the thing that really freak me out. And I have cited playing like video games and stuff when I was very young, where kind of just like the biggest fear of mine is having a skeleton reanimate, is having a skeleton that has
wow.
it doesn't have any muscles, no tissue. There's nothing. It's being powered by something that is not of this earth. And so that's terrifying.
Mm.
And this is a very weird thing, is that when I was in high school, I want to say maybe I was still in middle school, but anyway, I saw a diagram. My brother is a big Dale Earnhardt, the NASCAR drivers fan. Okay. And I remember seeing a diagram after Dale Earnhardt died in the newspaper that was showing a skeleton, not his skeleton. It was an illustration of a skeleton to show how he died, essentially, like what part of the harness system failed. And
Mm.
I was completely not focused on what the content of the article was. Instead, I was staring at that photo that was meant to represent a person that really had just been here and is no longer with us. And I realized, oh, I think the other reason why skeletons freak me out is because they are the sign of mortality. They are the quintessential sign of mortality. We still use them today when,
Yes.
when something is poisonous, when
Skull
something
and
is,
crossbones.
yeah, skull and crossbones. Like, it is a sign of everything dies. And this is the structure underneath the living matter. Bones are also living matter, by the way, but once they're dead,
Mhm.
this is like what's left over. And there's just such a weird, so somewhere in between the finality and the inevitability of death, and also the fear of something that represented something that was alive reanimating into motion without, just by way of spirit or something like demonic or whatever, is where that's where I cite as the origins of my skeleton fear.
Mm, that's an interesting share.
Right.
Very much in alignment with today's topic.
Oh man, yeah,
And the
Pluto
eighth house.
and the eighth house. Like
Yeah.
there is something beyond all of it. And what is the significance of these hands, these shadow hands covered in jewels, holding this skull?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that when I look at this card, a lot of what I see is also the shamanic process that gets associated with Pluto. Like if
Mm-hmm,
you've ever done anything like plant medicine, like ayahuasca or something like that,
mm-hmm,
because it takes you on. I mean, you face your a lot at going through those kind of process. So any kind of shamanic process, you're dealing with some kind of death of something that it's showing you something.
right.
So whenever especially how they're like dangling, I guess, on the card.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
That's what it just always brings me to something like that. It doesn't say what kind of flower this is, but I'm sure it's some kind of poisonous something
mm-hmm,
because it just makes sense being on this card and what it represents. But like the shadow hands coming up through the bone and through the skeleton, I think is
mm-hmm.
really, really interesting in depicting, visual representation of everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because once the skeleton is there, once the body is gone, and once the death has occurred, you can start picking apart those structural pieces too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I
And
mean,
how
that
much it even
whole
tells us. It tells us about the
yeah.
person. The structure tells you about the person. Anyone who's been is doing any of the um, self improvement systems or solopreneur programs, or has done a Tony Robbins thing. There's so much talk about your idea or your desire, your goal, or something like that. It doesn't fail, or it only rises to the level of your habits or your systems in place, or the
Mm,
structure that you have set for yourself. So structure is something that we think of as a very Saturnian thing. But
mhm,
actually, if you go even further for, say, someone who's doing Mind Valley work or TM or something like that and has understood, oh, behind the mechanics of the physical world lies an energetic world where things are really set in motion. And to me, that's what the skeleton, being like utilized to connect us to that awareness of, yeah, this is what the structure looks like after it's like been born into the world, but it's also representing, this whole the mystery, sauce behind all of it. This
mhm,
3D grid, or multi-dimensional grid that lives beyond what we end up seeing in the 3D world. And just like
yeah,
communicating with the dead. I mean, I love how it's like opening, using the mouth. It's like it's the shadow hands, the shadow of spirit to me is utilizing, is
yes,
actually controlling the mandible, is that what the jaw is called?
mhm,
So that it can speak to us and through us. Oh man, this is wild. And I love
yeah,
also this whole the jewels and the moon. It's giving me
mhm,
very much, again, the knowingness of spirit, the how it's, to me it's very much like passed down through the mitochondria, like through the mother, through the emotions, how we connect to spirit through our energy motions, our emotions, and our emotional memory of things. And the
mhm,
jewels is also reminding me, not just giving me star seed or, the information that is crystallized into these crystals and stuff like that, but also it's reminding me of how this is how you used to carry the family jewels. This is how you used to carry your wealth through generations on your body. It wasn't in paper currency, gold bars and stuff like that is too heavy. Instead, you actually have these, heirlooms, these
Mhm.
the knowledge, you're carrying the knowledge and your wealth, the wealth of this knowledge that's been passed down through generations and generations and generations on your body.
Yeah. And inheritance lives in the 8th house also.
Absolutely. Both
Yeah,
karmic and monetary.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So this was a good one, I thought, to kind of bring in for today.
I love it. It's giving me New Orleans big time too, which is a super
Yes.
scorpionic place,
Oh,
very
sure is.
Plutonian. When I was first getting into doing astrology for other people, I remember doing for my old college roommate before, or maybe even a little after graduation, but we were still living together. And I told her, "You have too much Scorpio on your chart to not go down to New Orleans." I was like, "Go to
Mm.
New Orleans." And she's lived there for, I want to say like 11 years now.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, oh my gosh, I said 11 years? That's crazy. Maybe it's like only 9, but whatever it is, she's really thrived down there. And I was right. Without doing relocation
Mhm.
astrology, I was just like energetically, this is the place that's really going to vibe with you. And it turns out it does.
Yeah. And one of the other things too that is a 8th house theme is the taboo.
Right.
So, just pulling in the tarot and oracle and everything, all the resources that we're using today as the visual representations, I think is pretty cool because, that's the place where all of those subjects lie in the chart as well.
Yes, the taboo.
And
The
this
taboo.
card too reminds me of, like, decomposition to an extent because you see, like, decomposition is also kind of an unseen force that it partakes or is part of the um, transformation process after
Mhm.
death.
Right.
But I mean, if you've ever watched like, a piece of fruit go bad or something, like there's so many different stages to it and there's so many different elements to it, like with the everything that goes into like the gases that get released, the gases that get used. Like, it's just like you're watching this thing go from one form to another, but there's so many unseen pieces that go into bringing it from the one form to the other. I think is part of, a big part of what we're talking about today too.
I love that. Do we know what this something that's around, like, I don't know if it's this around the circle, there's these, I don't know if it's a wreath or like a spine or like lights or something like that that's actually around this circle. Do we know what that is? Some kind of twine. It feels to me very like some kind of twine, like holding together, the energetic field of the
Mhm,
living and the dead almost,
mhm.
but I don't know if that's actually what it is. That's just kind of what it's giving me. It looks like kind of like Christmas lights, you know? Um,
It does.
and it's
It
kind of
almost
in
reminds me of,
Florida.
like, thin bone.
Ooh, yeah, I don't even know. Man,
Yeah.
I love Pluto. And the whole reason
Yes.
why we're also doing this is because, and again, I think it is so, it really exemplifies the whole problem of, and I guess we're going to get into a chart of when um, Pluto was demoted from a planet to
Yes,
being
that's part 2 next week.
oh, okay, that's the next week. It's a dwarf planet. But the fact that why would you care? Like for people aren't even aware that Pluto represents the soul or the soul's will, right? It is
Mhm,
the higher octave of Mars in that way. It also gives me the difference between like masculine warfare versus like feminine warfare, where like the
mhm.
masculine just like fights it out, until like everyone's energy or hormone cycle is reset and they're like, okay, we're good, or someone's been dominated and we're fine. But the totality of Pluto warfare is like, no, bitch, it's you, and it's 7 generations after that.
Yeah.
It's so, it's the chasm of just having it swallow something that was previously alive and like a power system or, a symbol of power just being swallowed up by the powers that be. And now all
Mm,
that exists as like the shadow of its memory still being there, which
mm.
kind of like gives you that freak out of, is it still around? Is it looming? Is it a curse? Like, do I still
Yeah.
have to account for it? It's that, that it's the ghost, it's the shadow of what was, but you kind of have a feeling like it's still there because
It's
everything
still
that's ever
there.
existed is still here. It's
Yeah.
just transitioned or transformed into a different plane or a different like material or matter or antimatter or whatever, ether, it's just it's transformed into something else. That also, what you were talking about with the decomposition is so true because when we're talking about Pluto, we're talking about energetics, but how exacting they are. There's something as exacting as, Mars, in the Aries kind of form being, I think of like the age of Aries. I think of, Roman gladiator. I think of, something, whoever the biggest brawn holding wielding the biggest stick or the biggest sword, is the
Mm.
person who can do the most damage. But when we're talking about Pluto, it's kind of like the person who has like made the most peace or can have like the most, can one withstand and do surrender gracefully, you know what I'm saying? Like being
Yes.
able to pick like you don't care so much about the battle because you're focused on the war, you know how to win the war kind of
Right.
thing. Um, Pluto and Scorpio and eighth house, Pluto and Scorpio specifically, less about the eighth house, but is also has revenge as which revenge is a taboo. But also when we think about eighth house and inheritance and hidden enemies, right? We also think of vendetta, right? Vendetta is something that is passed down
Yes.
through generation also. But in terms of the energetics, it makes me think of, and I'm going to get this wrong because I don't have a feng shui book or something out here, but in feng shui, there's like three different kinds of chi essentially, or like
Mhm.
of like feng shui orientation. And there's the good kind, which is that the chi, the life force energy, is moving freely through a space. And then there's this bad kind of feng shui where something is actively evil, or like, so let's say you have like a corner that's built out of and into an open space and it creates this death dart and something like that, so it's very active.
Mm.
Or you have like a chandelier that has, something that looks very blade like pointing down to the ground. Well, the energy that goes along the ceiling goes on that chandelier, and now you're just pointing death darts down at whoever's sitting under it, right? So this is active negative feng shui. But then there's a third kind that is like death and decomposition feng shui, which is like, let's say you have a corner of your room that keeps compiling stuff. There's no energy getting to it. It actually becomes a black hole. And you'll notice when things start to accumulate, it starts to accumulate quicker and it gets more stale. It
Oh,
literally creates
wow.
an energy black hole. And that actually produces this like death feng shui
Huh.
energy where this is where things go to die. And it's actually
Wow.
increasing its real estate in the room, which means that more and more chi is getting caught there and decomposing into
Mm.
non-energetic, non-usable energy.
It almost
Um,
reminds me of, like, soul sucking.
it is like soul sucking. Things become pile up and they become soul sucking because the chi can't move around. So you're not,
Mm.
it's not making it to the rest of the body, whether it be your body or the rest of, the living space or the space that you're inhabiting. It literally becomes a black hole. So that decomposition it's also reminding me like, you know, people, even animals know well enough not to eat next to it to their dead. They don't necessarily have to bury their dead, but they don't put living things, by some or their food or whatever by something that is actively decomposing.
Mm.
You might even want to move your fruit and your, vegetables away from a piece of fruit that is actively decomposing because it
Yeah,
will start decomposing the things around it. So
exactly.
it's all the things that you can feel, but and it might take a long time to see, but it's even harder to you're not really here to comprehend what happens in the eighth house. You're just there to know it's an integral part of what's happening
Mhm.
and to observe it and to surrender to the unknowingness so that you're not afraid of it and it's not controlling, your Taurian, earthen second house kind of vibe. It's like max out while I have this mortal coil, that which I'm here to do. enjoy the inherent value of having a body that's alive and well. Because on the
Mm.
other side, that there is, yes, there is something else on the other side of things, but I don't need to. I can alchemize the fear of the uncertainty, and I can just surrender to its mystery and use that as a way to fuel my current understanding, my current appreciation
Yes.
of the value of now, the value of my physical life and presence.
Yes, that is the plutonic process.
Yes.
Do you want to look at some of these other cards?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to.
So this is the one that here we go with. All right, so we're going to see
Ah,
a theme building here. We
we're
already
gonna
are.
see the theme building here. So, this is the death card from what's her name? Cannon Reed. What's her I've already forgotten her name.
Wait, you sent it to me.
It's
You
an
don't have to
old,
remember.
it's an old, it's like from the 80s, I want to say. Yeah, I did send it to you. This, what's her name? Her name
Ellen
is,
Cannon Reed,
yes, Ellen Cannon Reed.
The Witch's
I
Tarot.
Yes, this is the Witch's Tarot. I love, so the number 13 is the number of the major arcana that the death card represents in the tarot. I love how this classic death character with the Sith and the hooded, skeleton and the moon, as well as the earth. It's actually showing that they're both experienced in the same place.
Yes, I
It
see
might
that.
actually be the sun and the earth, and between the sun and the earth lies this whole like death realm that in fact cohabitates with both of those. But what's even more fascinating is that you see the heads of all of these other characters. I think they're not all major arcana. They also include some of the minor arcana. The heads of the other characters in the tarot are all there. They're all in the underworld after having experienced a physical death, but they're still represented, and they're all
Hmm.
asleep. It looks like they're all asleep.
They look
So
like zombies.
they look like zombies. It's very scary. But also it's giving me kind of like that shamanic practice, as well as for those of you who watched and or read the what's the Fire and Ice series, Game of Thrones. There's a whole character arc or storyline where Arya becomes part of this assassin, trained something. And the final level of mastering it is to become like this shapeshifter where you have access to all of these faces of like people that have come before. So now you can
Mm.
you know, you can mask yourself and take on the essence of someone else, so much so that you look like them, sound like them, and that's part of your disguise and makes you that much more difficult to, you move in shadow because you're actually in disguise. But it also gives me
Mm.
like the thought of the shamanic practice that like you can call in from the ether one of these other voices, souls, experience, timelines, and wear it or have it move through you as part of getting the download, getting the essence, getting the wisdom, getting the
Mm.
experience without actually being that person. Hopefully, you don't become possessed or anything. But this is kind of
Eh,
like what it's reminding me. It's like all that's come before is still there. It's you can just call it down to you. Um,
very
yeah.
cool. All right, here's another one that you shared.
Okay, so yeah, this I haven't had this deck for as long, but again, we see a similar theme of this time the death is on horseback, and we also see some crowned dude who is who's mostly under the ground,
Yeah,
and we
they
have the
look buried with their
scorpion.
heads sticking out.
Right, their heads sticking out. We see at the bottom of it that again, it's the 13th of the major arcana and the glyph of Scorpio there. We also have a snake, which I
Yep.
think we'll get into even more when we talk about the in between Scorpio and Sagittarius
Uh-huh.
of Ophiuchus, but we're not going to go there yet. And even
There's an
just like,
eagle.
oh yeah, there's an eagle, and it almost looks like I don't know if that's, I want to say that that is in the back. What it looks like is like in this death world, or like death, like kind of going through the physical dimension. And you can see this, it completes the loop, like it's like you have this like stairway to heaven, and you
Yes.
go into like the clouds, and then you
And the
have
people
these.
are in bubbles, the
Yeah, the
spirits.
people are in bubbles. So it's like these souls are in the ether in bubbles. And then, they have a way to come back down and cross the river back into the physical plane, while people's physical bodies are still underground. Like, their mortal coils that they have left are uh, subsumed by the earth. And yet the essence, their spirit, their consciousness, kind of goes back into the ether to repeat this cycle, this death rebirth cycle. So
Yeah.
it's very.
It's really cool too that they put the river over the land rather than it
Mhm.
being a bridge,
Yeah,
because you have
I
to
love
kind of
that.
go into that water realm, that consciousness and
Right.
subconsciousness in that process.
Yeah. And on
I
the
think
other
that's really
side of
cool.
the river, that's where the fruiting tree is, and the
Mhm.
birds and the bushes. And so on the other side of this river is the living, and on this other side is the dead. And then you just kind of see through this stairway and path into the heavens, and then back down, how it all comes. And how you get to see the tributary water in the background. They look like hills, there's
Mhm.
like mountains, but the water comes back down and flows in the river and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just like the life, death, rebirth cycle. It's
Yeah.
very, very, very Scorpio, very Plutonian.
Yes. And here's another one. This is the death key from the Thoth tarot.
Ooh, whoa.
Yeah. Talk about taboo, like Alistair Crawley and all that, like that. This whole deck is just shrouded in all kinds of things that we could do a whole other episode on, but kind of
Does
like
it
the
say
similar thing.
Trumps? It says Trumps
Yes.
under the death. Oh, that's so interesting.
Hmm.
Oh
But you can
man.
see the skeletons also there, but it's almost like a puppet kind of figure because
Hmm.
it's got all these strings attached to all the souls that are in these bubbles again. Kind of the visuals are very similar.
And they still have the Sith there. I also
Yep.
love how this web and how these lines, they both look like they remind me of a ship. They remind me of
A
but they
mast.
also, yeah, a mast. That's right. Thank you. And then
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
also looks like, yeah, like strings on a puppet. And then also it reminds me of a like a violin or like a string instrument. There's a lot of like instrument kind of stuff that's happening here, to the point where even the ribs of the skeleton look like, I don't know, it looks like both part of a mast, but also it's a vessel, as well as like an instrument, as well as something that ties you to the rest of the experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And we've got the snake on this as well. There's a fish similar to the one from the card before. I believe there's a scorpion down there. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool because each one of these cards so far has kind of shown like the dark and the light. Like there's
Right.
always light at the end of the tunnel, I guess you could say. Like
Right.
there's something on the other side that is worth crawling through the mud or going through the underworld journey to get to, because
Yeah.
it represents the rebirth kind of, visually, symbolically, with the moon or the sun or whatever we're looking at on the cards, which is cool.
Right. And without the light, there is no dark. And without the dark, there is
Exactly.
no light. You need the contrast to experience it, or even know that it exists,
Yeah.
which, if we get into a more psychological, psych astrology, and the work of not just the astrologers, but also Carl Jung and stuff like that, talking about
Hmm.
the shadow is something that all of us have. And I'm interested to know what you feel is the most shadowy, because the eighth house is like where our shadow is, but really your seventh house to me is your mirror image, is your shadow. It's like that what you have to experience outside of yourself, or it has to be mirrored back at you in order
Yeah.
for you to integrate it through the eighth house, through the surrender. But you don't integrate in a fixed sign. You fortify, you double down, you get the full experience until it shakes its mortal coil, or until the expiration date of that, and you move on to the next place, and then you integrate the information from there
Mm,
in the mutable signs, in the liminal space of the ninth house or Sagittarius. And
mhm.
so there's something, oh, it's so crazy. I love how, like, in all of these things, not only the light and the dark, it's also giving like the finality of things is just the start of something else.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the trumps, I wonder what the trump, like that death, like trumps everything, or, that like life death trumps death. I'm like really interested to
Yes.
know what it's trying to say to us with death being imprinted in the bold print in the foreground, but trumps being in shadow, but in larger letters
Mhm.
in the background of the
Yeah.
banner on the bottom.
Yeah, this deck is super interesting. There's so many different layers. I was just trying to see if it actually has, like, a dedicated section about the Trumps.
Hmm.
It
I
does
also think
not.
it's interesting that the scorpion and the fish are also represented there, and the fish, in my
Oh, it just said it means that it's one of the major arcana cards.
oh, the Trump
Mhm.
does. Oh, okay, I got you.
Yes. Yeah.
Ah,
But I like where you were going with it.
yeah. I mean, it just seemed really interesting in the way that they put it there. But now that in the context of how the whole deck is formatted, that makes a lot of sense. So, for
Yeah.
those of you who are also new to tarot, one of the things that when you start reading tarot and the minor arcana are present, and then a major arcana card flips out, it trumps essentially what these kind of like building block procedural, more
Mhm.
um, I don't know, granular, like elementary steps leading up to something that is actually fate driven, something that is
Yes.
actually like,
Beyond your control.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
That is represented by the major arcana. So that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. And I do like how it actually, oh no, I was about to be like, oh, is that 8? I was like, no, I just suck at reading Roman numerals. No, that is a 13 here also. But I always think of 8 as also being, the eighth house and stuff like that. But no, it is. Ah, the tower. Oh
Yeah,
my
let's
gosh.
look at one tower card to pull the Mars energy into it, and then we're a little over an hour, so let's
Okay.
dissect this one a little bit and then wrap it up for today.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so this is another one from Ellen Cannon Reed's The Witch's Tarot. And the tower is the other card that really represents Scorpio Plutonian energy by way of Mars, essentially.
Mhm.
um, and a tower moment, we've all had one, is when shit falls apart. It is
Yep.
the cataclysm that brings on the death. The death, I mean, the death is the rebirth aspect, and that's also represented in the fact that death sequentially happens before the tower, right? Or no. Yeah,
That's
14 or this is 16. This is the tower 16, right?
yes.
I'm bad at reading Roman numerals. I know I suck. Yeah, 16 comes after, and again, it's a sequential, it's a cumulative like process from the Fool all the way to the World, and notice how death is not the end of the major
Right in
arcana.
the
Or,
middle.
yeah, right. It's actually it's pretty early on, and almost it feels.
Mhm.
Um, but the tower moment is destruction, and the cataclysm that forces us to rebuild. It is the flood, it is the major cataclysm of, um, it's just a major cataclysm. It just brings the
Yep.
whole the whole
The
shebang
destructive
down.
force. Yep.
Right, the destructive force that causes rebirth and rebuild. on a more physical level. I mean, it's definitely, it's a conceptual thing. Ego death is really, when I see the death card, yes, when I see the tower card, I really think of ego death big time, because, and that to me is the martial energy behind it. Because if Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars is man's will or the ego's will, and Pluto, Scorpio, is the soul's will. The Tower card is the card resemble like signifying both, how the spirit, how the soul's will and the ego's will are intertwined, and how that creates a structure that is then leveled,
Yeah.
and the rebirth process begins.
Yeah. And just the positioning of the light and the dark on this card, I think speaks to that. Because you have
Hmm.
this, whatever the orb is at the top and then the orb at the bottom. And the tower is sort of bridging the two together, even though
Right,
it's falling apart.
right.
But the
And
light's still
also,
shining through.
right. And the death card, when is taken interpreted upright, actually means rebirth, right? It means new beginnings. It means new
Hmm.
beginnings. And when it's upside down, it means that there is not a new beginning, essentially, or there hasn't been a death and a surrender and a rebirth available. Whereas the tower is the actual destruction. The tower is the destruction that then will bring on, what comes after it. I'm trying to think, what is the next card in the tarot? Is it
Um,
Judgment, maybe? I know,
let me
I meant
see.
to. I had it in my pocket this entire time, and then I didn't bring it with me. Um, but yeah, the tower. I have the tower card
The
like right here.
star.
Oh, the star. Oh man,
Hmm.
that's so wild. Yeah, so the star being, the concept, that you reach for the
Eternal
stars.
consciousness.
Yeah, the eternal consciousness that is guiding you, but you're like on a very specific journey for that very specific star or gleam of eternal consciousness is
Hmm.
illuminating your way after the destruction of the tower. That's
Yeah.
what brings you to the next place. And what comes after the star?
Let me get back there.
I know.
This guidebook is actually really handy for the Thoth.
Oh yeah.
Um, so we have the tower, the star, then the moon, and then the sun.
The tower, the star, the moon, and then the sun.
So you have to
Wow.
go into that, like I was saying before, sub unconscious place first
Right.
to delve out and bring to the surface what wants to be shown in the
That
light.
that's so interesting. And the star, I'm thinking astrologically, the star is Aquarius, and
Hmm.
the moon is Pisces, and then the sun is Leo.
Leo, yep.
Um, and we associate the tower with Scorpio and Mars. Interesting.
Hmm. It is interesting, isn't it?
It's super interesting. The
Yeah.
tower, we've all had one.
Oh, yeah.
The destruction that brings forth the new light, the new journey for the forever consciousness.
Yeah. Something else is coming online that, was there all along that is ready,
Right,
essentially.
exactly. Um, I guess we'll touch on, the next week when we talk about, are we talking about Ophiuchus next week or no? I can't
We're,
remember.
we're doing Pluto part 2 next week.
Right. Pluto Part 2. There's something that I said that we were going to talk about in Pluto Part 2 that that's already missed my mind, and I have my notes here, but I'm thinking about talking more about Hades. I'm personally going to bring in asteroid Persephone and the myth of Persephone
Yes. Let's
into
do the myth.
next week's
Mhm.
uh, communication download message. And we're going to wax hermetic on our second aspect of Pluto, our Pluto love and why you should love Pluto too. We don't fear Pluto, but do be aware of its power because it's serious. And if you don't know, if you don't have a lot of eighth house stuff in there, hopefully your therapist does, or at least your astrologer, because it is a really rich place where you can get all the intel as to what is happening behind the scenes, but that you, behind the great and powerful Oz, or all the things that you've been told to pay attention to, but
Yeah.
actually is being controlled by someplace far deeper, far darker than your everyday consciousness tends to go.
Mic drop moment right there. Perfect
Amazing.
segue into next week, our teaser.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Wax Hermetic here at Cafe C on the Astro Magistus YouTube channel. And my name is Elise Anamkara. This is
I'm Ursula Duffy. And we'll be back with you next Wednesday at 12.
And we are closing the circle with the sound of the bell.